Woohoo! Hello, my wonderful watchers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. First off, let me say that, in my humble opinion, this was the best episode yet. I'm talking about The Mandalorian, Episode 7, The Reckoning. It brought together all the elements that has made the series so enjoyable and then made them better. And it does it all while sticking like glue to exactly the plot that we expected. There were plot twists. There were stakes. You didn't know who was going to live and who was going to die. But still, the episode is very, very familiar. There will be spoilers from this point out. You have been warned. But just like in this episode, you know where you are going. But the journey is all the fun. First off, and in no particular order, how do you make any show more awesome? Add dinosaurs! Well, okay, pterodactyls aren't exactly dinosaurs, but you know what I mean. The cree! The terror, the wings in the night. They were in the same books as dinosaurs. Deal with it. The show used this rule and made an awesome callback to my personal favorite horror movie cult classic. It is, in fact, the only horror movie that I ever thoroughly enjoyed. I have a general distaste for the genre, but yes, this show had an entire scene devoted to the Vin Diesel cult classic Pitch Black. And this wasn't just a throwaway homage scene. This scene did a lot of character development and a lot of plot development. First off, this is a classic science fiction show. It doesn't care too terribly much about scientific accuracy. The ships, even with their gravity technology, have just enough internal dampening to make the impact scenes impressive. It is still a science fiction show of the classic sort, and if the scene and the rule of cool call for a winged predator to pick up and carry off something that clearly outmasses it, then by dango, it can pick that bugger up. I love how this show flirted with scientific accuracy at first. When I assume they're krat dragons in universe, but we'll call them the pitch black pterodactyls, show up, it looks like they are actually sticking to a reasonable weight class for the first thing they grab, and even though the scene was awesome, my nerd brain promptly hummed with happiness. They were being reasonable about gravity, muscle strength, and lift surface. This was... And then the critters picked up something that was nearly its mass. And then something that was obviously at least 3 times its mass. Psych! Shouted the show gleefully. You thought I was going to stick to boring old physics. No. Now quit whining and sit back and enjoy the nonsense. Though to be perfectly fair, the show did give the animals a reasonable hunting mechanism. These critters were clearly designed to swoop in, poison their prey, then sit back and watch it die from a safe distance before coming in to eat the safely dead animal, which is a combination of the feeding dragon strategies of the Komodo dragon, or most poisonous reptiles, and the California condor. So actually, fairly good biology and ecology reasoning on the writer's parts, just that classic science fiction utter disregard for physics. And secondly, but most delightfully for me, this episode had stakes, real stakes. When the action scenes got rolling, you did not know who was going to live and who was going to die. Of course, there were the givens. Mando and Baby Yoda were safe. But everyone else, from the animals to the droids to Cara Dune, were fair game according to the science fiction storytelling rules. We were not attached enough to any of them to give them plot armor. And who lives and who dies still manages to be a surprise, but my heart was pounding during the chase scenes. And I will admit that I screamed and said, "How dare you," when the deaths actually happened. It was a ride. And it was the genius scene with the pterodactyls that sets this up. There was a death. Not a heartbreaking death, to be sure, not a major death, but one that by certain rules should have been protected, forbidden specifically by the rules of Big Daddy Disney. It was a subtle thing, a one-off in a scene about monsters in the dark, but it set the rule. Sure, the main characters, both of them are off limits, but everyone else is fair game, and that really set up the stakes for this episode, because there are several characters that you do care about, but they don't have plot armor. And, oh, sweet, merciful nerd herders, I still want to squeal over this episode like the little fangirl I am deep down inside. But you didn't come here for that, so let's get down to the overanalysis. There's just so much in this episode. I think I will get one character at a time and analyze them in relation to the strongest element of the show: its ability to use subtle plot twists. This show isn't a road that forks dramatically as you round a corner, it's a corkscrew. Every twist still takes you back to the main line of travel, but wow, it works to open that bottle of bubbly enjoyment. First off, Donut. Now, I know that Donut didn't get much screen time, but she really advanced the world building. She showed that there's diversity in her species. She showed that her boss was really cool. He didn't need the biggest. A nice little compact would do. And most of all, she was one of the examples of how the show uses subtle plot twists. Her wings fold. You can tell from the moment she appears on screens that there is something different about her, but when she lands and the wings fold and the landing gear come out, there is a startled reaction. It gets subsumed into the plot of the show nearly instantly, but is there and it is delightful. I call her Donut after the tires because she is cute, round, undersized, and gets the job done. Secondly, there is Cooley. When Kara asked Mando if he had a babysitter, I was personally sure that he was going to go for Peli. After all, she was the one who had lectured him about taking care of Baby Yoda, while Cooley was at least verbally complicit in handing the child over to the imps in the first place. But apparently Mando places combat competence over sentiment. And now, let's talk about the internet's new favorite alien grandpa. This character illustrates how well the writer's human and how good the actors are. When he compliments Cara Dune, I'm saving that compliment for my next Kohai, by the way. This one looks genetically engineered. It isn't creepy at all. That is the tone that your wholesome uncle uses to compliment you when you reach a milestone birthday. And Kara's reaction was perfect. That smile said, "From you, I accept this compliment. From anybody younger, it would have earned a strong right hook. But you're cool, Gramps. You're cool." And what about Cooley? What about him really? He seemed to be blaming the Empire for his slavery, but did anybody else catch that throwaway line? He had been sold into indentured servitude and was working off his debt. He worked for 3 human lifetimes. Assume 70 years times 3 is 210 years, at the minimum. That puts his sale in slavery well before the Empire by a long margin. He was sold in Old Republic times. A lot of Star Wars media overlooks the simple reality that the rot and evil that infested the Empire pre-existed in the Republic. Not even a Sith Lord, no matter how powerful he was, could have taken down a healthy Republic, or a healthy Jedi Order. It was always rotten. I love this bit. It really looks to me like the show is exploring a complex concept here. The idea of evil existing in the heart of every human or human analog, and that blowing up a superweapon won't solve all your problems. It is possible that they are even building up to the cause of the First Order with this. Dare I even hope that this show will face the concept of personal responsibility and individual morality? Either way, Cooley is a fascinating character. He spent lifetimes as a slave and maybe 20 years of it under the Empire. So his perspective is going to be curious. And Mando. Oh, Mando. This show does its heroes so well. He has faults. He risked everything because he was impatient and panicking. If he'd stayed quiet, if he hadn't broken radio silence, but his faults are so real, so understandable, so very, very human. It says something about the state of modern entertainment, that crafting human reactions well is a rare skill. But here's to you, creators of The Mandalorian. You human real good. And Cara Dune, my lovely fault-ridden bar fighter. She is either an Oscar-worthy actor or a perfectly cast in this role. The bar fight scene was wonderful, and she and the other actor were clearly having so much fun. They both radiated glee, and that is saying something for the other guy, given how much makeup he had to radiate through. They were children wrestling over a prize. There was no malice, no mocking, just a straight-up MMA fight. And the idea for the belts was a great little plot device, a cage and an ultimate tap-out in one. And the fight was so real. They were tired, making mistakes, pausing to just kind of hold each other up while gasping for air at moments. I am really beginning to like the idea of hiring actual MMAs for actors. That at least Gina's doing well. And Warner Herzog, you beautiful conundrum, you. Okay, confession time. I work very hard to keep a layer of ignorance between me and actors. I don't want to know their real names. I don't want to know their personalities. I have a hard time separating the character from the actor. What happens when the adorable archaeologist you know and love turns out to be a jerk on set but off camera? Or worse, what happens when the perfectly evil villain is a sweet old grandpa? It creates this gyrating pull for me, bumping me out of the story like a badly loaded washing machine. But even with that problem, Grandpa Herzog brings the goods. I do not often laugh out loud at movies, but I nearly split my sides when Herzog gave the line, "We will all be quiet." That beautiful old man sarcasm, the subtext of "open the box before I shoot you, you idiot," it was perfect. And the Guildmaster! I thankfully don't know his name, but all the actors on screen, his acting stuck out to me. In Chapter 1, it made me uneasy for the show. It was so forced, so awkward. He was clearly, well, acting. I comforted myself with the idea that it was just one actor in a secondary role. So, hey, they hired a cheap actor, no biggie. But if this was a hint of the quality to come in secondary characters, it did not bode well for the show. But then I watched it again, and I noticed that his acting was perfectly natural in scenes where he wasn't presenting himself to the bounty hunters. The actor wasn't acting poorly, the character was acting poorly. In this episode, it showed when he is examining Baby Yoda. He is acting the part of a charmed adult, being very understanding about Mando's connection to the child. His face and body language, the little pause as he searches his memory banks for some adjective to describe the little bog troll. The actor is acting. The character is acting poorly perfectly. And if you think that sentence was horrible, remember, I had to write it. And the child. Oh dear Baby Yoda. What do we know? First, by this point in the filming, the puppet crew had truly mastered the art of making him walk. There's a scene that I'm sure was put in for no other reason than to show off how well they could make that puppet move on the floor. Secondly, this show dispensed with hints. The child is no toddler, not by a long shot. He is older, but perhaps not by much, mentally. Somewhere between a toddler and a teenager, he understands the basic language and is able to react to what he understands. He knows how the ship works and how to eavesdrop. He's old enough to make an action plan, but not old enough to think out the consequences. I'll have a whole other video on just his mental age, but he is not a baby. This will not stop me from calling him Baby Yoda, though. And we have a very reliable source saying in show that it was very unlikely that he was cloned. He was almost certainly a natural creature. I won't go into much detail here as I have other videos coming, but the child remains a cipher even as we gather more data. On a last note, I'd just like to point out one of the more interesting little corkscrew plot twists. In the hold of the Razor Crest, the gathered posse is relaxing, and of course, Cara Dune and Mando are arm wrestling. It's hard to tell who has the upper hand, but Mando is obviously struggling, but Cara Dune doesn't want to raise the bed. Baby Yoda reached out his little hand, and I felt the entire audience smile. Oh look! Baby Yoda's going to help Daddy Mando win! Cara will be so surprised. She won't pay up the bet, of course, but wait, why isn't the fist going down? Sweet Darth Vader in the hallway. Baby Yoda is force choking her. That is not okay, Cara snaps out as soon as she can breathe. This raises some very, very uncomfortable points. One of the first force abilities to develop is sensitivity to danger, threat detection, for obvious reasons. Before any force user can lift rocks, they can sense if something is going to harm them or their loved ones. No force user has ever required training for this. It's just part of the way that they know that a kid's a force user. And Baby Yoda considered Cara Dune a threat. The first possibility this brings up is one I've explored in previous videos. Did the mind-scrambling droid in Chapter 3 mess with Baby Yoda's abilities? Can he no longer differentiate between play and combat? And he hasn't lifted anything as heavy in a mudhorn in a while. Maybe his force use has been weakened, his mind clouded. And why the flying flip did he go for her neck? The obvious point of attack, even if he did consider her a threat, would be their clasped hands. Or is Cara Dune a threat? She has a past. While she has had many, many chances to betray or kill Mando and the child and not use them, Did somebody manage to turn her? Curious, very curious. Or consider the fact that this show does not have filler. Every episode has advanced the plot or the character development, and they feel no need to fill out an episode to an arbitrary length of time. And the show that despises filler just spent a rather long time on that droid repair scene. On the surface, it was just an homage to all the stop-motion animations of the past, of the artists that pioneered the skills that would be used to create Star Wars in the first place. But it was Grandpa Cooley who was narrating it, the voice of filial love for the show, the voice of scientific accuracy. And his point was that things created to kill are not bound by their creator's intentions, that through love and instruction you can tame a monster. And he was saying it to the Mando. At first I thought it was about the Mando himself, or possibly Cara, or both. But what if it was about Baby Yoda? I will go into Baby Yoda's current psychology in a later video. For now, it is just something to think about. This darkest of corkscrew plot twists. So, those are my thoughts on The Reckoning. What do you think? Am I way off base? Am I overanalyzing? Of course I am. Is the idea of Cara turning traitor more or less plausible than Baby Yoda already having taken toddling steps down the path of the dark side? Leave a like or a stinging comment below and let me know. Peace out, my wonderful watchers, and I will see you later.